And we are back with more on News Talk Saga 960. So very glad you could join us on this edition of the Mark Petronis Show. Well, we all know BJ Dichter right now. I mean, the guy is as famous as they come in terms of convoy organizers, certainly a key player in all of that. Last week, we reported a story that was widely distributed about one of the key banks, in this case, Scotiabank, apologizing to Benjamin for its role in all the frustration and inconvenience associated with freezing bank accounts. Well, turns out that honking for freedom is not dead, not by any stretch. And Benjamin's going to tell us basically what's going to happen next, because as we all know on the Mark Petronis Show, if anything annoys the government, whatever annoys the government, the Trudeau government, keep doing it, right? We hit them hard, we hit them often on this show, and we're not going to stop. And Benjamin, I know, agrees with me on that count. Welcome once again, Benjamin.
It's good to see you, Mark.
So, honking for freedom, it continues. I mean, it hasn't stopped. In case people think that it's over, that it was crushed by the Trudeau government when it imposed the Emergencies Act, when it seized assets. In fact, you're not quitting at all. The campaign continues, correct?
Yeah, it's quite shocking, the number of people from around the world and, significant people who have reached out to myself and others involved in the Freedom Convoy who want to see the momentum continue. Not necessarily, not in the form of a convoy. So everybody in the Canadian government, you can all calm down, just relax. But they do want to see some answers. And surprisingly, not many people have been pleased with the response from the government during those parliamentary hearings, those commissions, where everybody's doing it wasn't me, it was him, like they're all Bart Simpson. It wasn't me. That's really angering a lot of people, and a lot of people across the political spectrum as well, which is quite funny. There are people you'd think who in the past probably had supported the Liberals or Justin Trudeau, maybe in the very early days. They bought into kind of the narrative they were being sold. But these people are just fed up and they're tired, and they want to see that there's some sort of successful pushback, some campaign against the government to get some answers, because they don't want this to go away and to allow the government just to sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, meantime, we're seeing mandates kind of creep back into where they were in the United States. You, for instance, are due to fly back to the United States. Right now, you're in Colombia, and you're going to be returning to Florida, where I currently am right now on self-imposed exile. But well, it's not a real joke. I mean, people. I've tried to explain. I've done my best. People think I'm hiding out down here. I'm maybe hiding in plain sight. I mean, I'm not hiding the fact that I'm here. Yeah. But in your case, you were asked to get another COVID test, an antigen test, before you could fly again, which was kind of a change, isn't it? Because last time you didn't need an antigen test. And so they're bringing back one of the mandates that we all kind of thought maybe had gone away.
Yeah, the Kabuki Theater doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. And I was out for dinner last night, and I got an alert on my phone telling me that I needed to once again get an antigen test 24 hours before I boarded a plane into the US. And, as a side note, I have some friends who are sick with a cold. So we thought, and I had them, just get a test. Everybody has home testing kits here. And just make sure it's not COVID. Why? Because God forbid what they have, which they've been working all week at home and living their life normally with a little bit of a sore throat. But God forbid I happen to contract this form of a cold, this variant of COVID, which seems to be very, very light. I won't be able to enter the United States. Like, it's crazy. So I had to go to the lengths to tell them, go get a test. And if it's negative, like, I'd love to hang out with you guys, but I can't, because once again, government is up my rear, like everybody else, making our decisions for us. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, that Ontario had its recent election. You were in Colombia when that happened. Doug Ford returned with a large majority. No real threat there to him. And I know you're among those that are pretty disappointed in his handling of the convoy. You thought maybe a conservative, somebody who is ideologically predisposed to smaller government, more freedom, turned out to be the exact opposite. Do you want to weigh in on Doug's victory?
Yeah, I don't know who has a worse approval rating, whether it's Doug Ford or Justin Trudeau. But Doug Ford, when you crunch the numbers, it was the second lowest voter turnout in history, which I think many of us understood that was what's going to happen. And he walked away with 18% of Ontarians voting for him. So he can prance around as much as he wants. Oh, look at me, I'm the majority. I'm like, no, no, you're the fringe majority, Mr. Anti-Convoy. And it's only a matter of time until it bites them in the ass. And the problem is that the NDP and the Liberal parties both imploded. We had New Blue, which is a new startup party that's trying to brand itself, and that's going to take a couple of elections for them to do so. But it's really disappointing because here you had an alternative going out there and saying, listen, we will roll back this Bill 100. We will roll back all the mandates, all the authoritarian measures that Doug Ford has brought in. And people, they always tell people on the far left, oh, they're like barking seals, they're like sheep. Well, what did we just do on the right? We voted for somebody who's more left wing than Kathleen Wynne because he's carrying the blue flag, and that's what's destroying the country.
Yeah, I would say so. Interesting, as you mentioned, that Jean Charest was running to be the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, seems to be digging into the ranks of liberals in Quebec in order to give him the boost he needs. That's kind of discouraging some on the Conservative side, which is to say, well, what do we need liberals deciding who the next leader of the Conservative Party is? And yet the party, unfortunately, is vulnerable under the current system to having an influx of 2-minute Tories come in, people who are never going to vote Conservative anyway, but are so afraid of Pierre Poilievre that they're prepared to support a guy like Jean Charest. I mean, do you have any thoughts about this? I mean, are you getting that gnawing sense of unease that this thing is going to be stolen from Pierre Poilievre? I mean, whether you support the guy or you don't support the guy is beside the point. He does have enormous numbers of supporters, and he's done a tremendous job in terms of galvanizing support and generating excitement for a race that might have otherwise been a snooze fest. I mean, are you getting the sense that somehow they'll steal it from him if they can?
I don't know. My assessment, personally, my opinion is that Pierre Poilievre is the favorite, despite what the lobbyists behind Charest want to tell people. And we all know who they are. You and I both know them personally. And very disappointed to see that they can sell out their country yet again. But those are the kinds of psychopaths that gravitate towards politics. It's unfortunately, and again, much like in the provincial level, that's what's destroying the country. I think Pierre is popular enough amongst people outside of just the traditional conservative electorate that there's enough liberals, blue liberals, and of which there are many of them, that say, you know what, I may not agree with a lot of things that the Conservatives are. I may not even understand what they are, which tends to be most of the time. But this guy Trudeau's got to go. It's gone to such a level of extremism. I mean, I watched this press release, not this press release, this press conference that Prime Minister Blackface Diversity had a couple of days ago, and not one word of what he said was true. Like, it was amazing. It was like he was Costanza. He was saying the opposite of absolutely every. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the degree of
Dishonesty.
Well, it's more than dishonesty. You have to be a certain level of compulsive liar to be able to pull that off. I couldn't believe it. I was so shocked. It was amazing.
Yeah, we have a couple of comments. I have a bad feeling a Charest, or that, I guess, Charest is backed by the elites. You think so? I'm pretty sure that is the case.
Correction.
Hello.
Correction. They're not elites. They're scavengers. And if they steal this one again, go get your pitchforks. I think that's the only thing left at this point. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I want to share a tweet from our friend Andy Lee. Mm-hmm. Travel vaccine lawsuit. 2 businessmen taking the Canadian federal government to court over vaccine mandates for travel have defeated an attempt by the Attorney General to remove the record portions of their affidavits in support of their position. That's okay. This is a story in the Epoch Times. Travel vax mandate lawsuit. Canadian court dismisses federal motion. Two businessmen are taking the Canadian federal government to court over its vaccine mandates. Well, do you think that they've got a case here? There's no doubt that this is causing enormous problems. I mean, it was recently, of course, we had the airlines come out through their association and demand that the government ease up on these ridiculous mandates. Every other country has gotten rid of them, or the vast majority of them. And so here we are in Canada, where he maintains these mandates and refuses, just like holding on to them for dear life. It's causing enormous damage. And yet they just don't seem to care, do they?
Yeah, and I think that's where the solution lies moving forward in terms of advocacy. I mean, we see this often from the left where they weaponize the legal system. I think it's time we return the favor. And this is why many of these people who have reached out to myself and others to say, we want to help build an organization, a foundation, however you want to call it, to start funding legal attacks against the entities and individuals that were directly involved and drag them through court. Now, and it's interesting, kind of their approach, as they suggested, don't worry about taking the government to court or taking certain individuals from the media to court and winning a case. That's not what this is about. This is about getting them into the position where they have to be on the record, right? And they have to answer direct questions under oath, which is what they're trying to avoid. They've been trying to avoid all this time. So if they want to censor people in the media from talking, they want to censor people in social media from talking, then fine. Fundraise some legal action against various entities and drag them through court for the next 4 years and teach them a lesson. Because unfortunately, that's the only option that's left. We can't go down this direction where, there are fringe people all over the world that would want to take matters into their own hands. That's not what Canada is. That's not going to help anything. And, aggressive rhetoric just makes things worse. But we have this tool that they're afraid of. And there's two tools they're afraid of. One is action in the legal system. And two is money. Raising lots and lots of money makes them not sleep at night when, from their perspective, the money's coming from the wrong direction. And that's what we saw in the Freedom Convoy. And that's why the government and certain individuals, Jerry Butts, reacted in the way that they did and aggressively targeted these peaceful protests. So I think we should return the favor at this time. And that's what honking for freedom is about.
Benjamin Dichter joining us on Saga 960 on the Mark Petrone Show, coming to us from the beautiful country of Colombia, which I understand is going through kind of a leftward swing, as are other countries. Sadly, even as other countries seem to be getting on the freedom bandwagon, the left has gotten hold of some of these nations, sadly, and they seem to be making inroads, Brazil among others. I hope Bolsonaro hangs in, but I understand he's trailing, so you never know.
And
Hopefully.
Chile and Argentina. Chile just had an election last week, same thing. Leftist Trudeau-like clown got into office. Like, it's got to stop, because they are not going to stop on the other end. And the way to stop them in their tracks is to fundraise massive Nicholas Sandman type lawsuits against them. It's the only thing that'll get their attention. That's why they're also not afraid of guns. That's why they don't care about banning guns, because to them, a gun is not the weapon. The only weapon that they fear is money coming at them.
Okay. Well, talk about that. I mean, we saw what happened with the huge donations that came into the coffers of the Freedom Convoy. Yeah. Much of it was seized. It was frozen. Accounts were frozen. Of course, crypto, Bitcoin, is a possible solution to that. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. The fact that in order to keep the government's grubby hands off those donations next time, it's got to be in Bitcoin, or most of it should be. What do you think?
Well, that's exactly what it is. So many of these people came together with some ideas and solutions, and wanted to help out, and suggested that, listen, you can't crowdfund with fiat money anymore. You saw that very clearly in the Freedom Convoy. The only thing that got through were the truckers. So they have connected us with a couple of law firms that will be custodying money once Bitcoin is received, and they have mechanisms for accepting money. And by the way, this is not in Canada. Everything is outside of Canada because the Canadian government cannot be trusted, and Canada can no longer be trusted. And these people understand that. So the idea is, and you can see it if you go to honkingforfreedom.com, that is where, you know, the initial fundraiser has been set up, that there's 6 areas that they want to help fund and raise awareness to, which is a legal defense of truckers and convoy organizers still facing charges. There's some opportunity for massive defamation suits to certain individuals and entities within the media and within government, a class action lawsuit around this whole mandate situation, a fundraiser to help not just Tamara Leach, but Chris Barber, who is also facing charges and will have to appear in court whenever he has to return. And then they want to do third-party advocacy, which is education about what the Trudeau government did, because you notice the spin machine from the other side is not stopping. Racist, bigots, white supremacists, whatever phobe it is. So there's a third-party advocacy campaign, and also they are interested in Bitcoin education, because there's a lot of people within the support base of the Freedom Convoy that when they hear the word Bitcoin, they recoil because they don't understand what it is. And in fact, you don't really need to understand how it operates. Most people don't understand how the fiat system operates. But what you do need to understand is it's the only way that it can be guaranteed that people who donate money to that will not have their money blocked. Their identity will be kept secret. They won't have the government going after them. And that's the only way to raise money in today's political climate. And it's a shame, because there was a time when the word liberal meant, you know, open discourse, freedom of speech, freedom to reach to the other side. But that seems to be all but dead and gone. And now we have liberal parties that are essentially Che Guevara running the thing. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, Ronald Reagan once said that if fascism makes a comeback, it'll be in the guise of liberalism.
Yeah.
But do you ever wonder, like, you know, and I realize it's Monday morning quarterbacking, but if Bitcoin was used back during the convoy when all that money was being raised, I mean, we might have been looking at a very different scenario. For one thing, the truckers would have ended up with that money, with that support, rather than having it confiscated and frozen. For another thing, there would have been no hacking by that lunatic hacker who doxed all the names of the people who had donated to GoFundMe. So,
and when he described himself as a digital terrorist, yet he doesn't face any charges.
No,
like, it always goes one direction here, and they don't understand that's going to the other side of the political spectrum. That's going to boomerang if they continue, because guess what? People on our side are going to want revenge.
Well, on what form could that take? I mean, lawfare, the lawsuits, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, exactly. That they think they can constantly be aggressive and attack people on one side of the political spectrum and think that they're never going to respond. And that's why, you know, many people have reached out to many of us to say you need to have a strategic legal plan to go after them, because we need to return the favor for exactly that reason.
It's interesting to look at some of the institutions. I mean, I've maintained that the convoy was one of the greatest events ever to take place in Canada. It was really, from my vantage point, a real coming of age for Canadians who believe in freedom and are prepared to stand up and fight for it. But other people, not so much. And many of these organizations that we had looked at as, you know, iconic in terms of the Canadian identity, like the RCMP and others, police forces, sadly, were really damaged in terms of their image in Canada. And the RCMP in particular was among those, because now they're reaching out, trying to you know, make amends with the people holding events and so forth, and suggesting that, you know, come out to see the RCMP. we've got a great event this summer, bringing the kids and all this kind of,
Done.
all this
I'm
other
going
sort
back
of
to
thing.
Canada. I'm going to go visit. How about that? I'm going to go say hello.
And I mean, and it's failing miserably. They're being skewered online because people don't trust them anymore. And so now the RCMP has had to go back and say, well, we're going to revisit many of our mandates and the way we approach everything. This is all part of the damage control. But I think these guys, there's no putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. Here's the RCMP's tweet from last week. Hey, Canada, are you looking for a great Canadian experience this summer? There's nothing more Canadian than the RCMP musical ride. We're touring in Saskatchewan, Quebec, and the Maritimes and Ontario. Find out where we'll be performing, this event. And you go down literally hundreds and hundreds of comments telling where to stick it. No, thanks. I'm not into being trampled.
Notice they're on their horses in the
yeah,
grass.
that's like the musical riders will do a number on you and your walker. This goes on and on. Are these the horses that trample the woman from the Mohawk territory? Getting ready for the Canadian Stampede. This is no thanks.
It's amazing.
If I wanted to be a corrupt Trudeau sycophant, I'd work for the government. So these guys are getting skewered. Nobody trusts these people. But this is, from my vantage point, my long way of getting around to discussing the importance of the convoy. And it really ripped the mask off these people. And it showed these organizations for being merely an extension of the regime rather than defenders of Canada. And so here we are, one of the institutions now that was damaged image-wise as a result of their conduct during the convoy.
I mean, I think they all damaged. It was various branches of the Canadian government, the entire banking system, and various police forces. I mean, this is the magic of Prime Minister Blackface. He destroys absolutely everything. He's like a wrecking ball because he's a kid. He's a kid in an adult body. He should be nowhere near power of any sort. Perhaps making a burger at McDonald's, I think he might be able to handle that. And that's about it. It's quite gross that they think, okay, we can just, turn the other cheek and, hey, let's all be friends again. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. I'm sorry. And it's funny how, you often hear this sort of rhetoric from people in Native communities and rural territories in Saskatchewan, in Alberta, and northern BC and Manitoba, that they always referred to the RCMP as being very aggressive, totalitarian, corrupt, whatever it is. And you never know how much of those are true. But now their complete incompetence has now brought that to people in the cities who now agree. And they've completely destroyed their reputation. And that is the legacy of, that's what happens when you take a bureaucrat like Brenda Lackey, I think is her name. I call her Lackey. Anyways, when Brenda Lackey is your commissioner because of what? Diversity. Great. It's really diverse. There's your useless, diverse police force. And, I've spoken to several RCMP officers last time I was out west. And man, just like officers in the Ontario area that I know, they're all counting the days of retirement because they said it's just completely collapsed. It's completely politicized, and they have no belief in their own system. Like, I know an officer who said to me this. He said, if I had trouble in my family, if, I don't know, there was a home invasion or whatever in my house, I wouldn't call the police at this point. I'm an officer. I would take care of it myself. That's how bad it's become. He said, I would not call my own police force. It's the Keystone Cops everywhere, man. And that's why the Keystone Cops, those morons, trampled that woman in the walker. And that other guy, by the way, who's a ghost, who we seem to believe, many journalists I've spoken to seem to believe that was an undercover RCMP officer. But you know what? I have an idea for the RCMP. Hey, you want to make amends? I got a great idea for you. The badge number and name of every single officer in Ottawa. Every single one of them. What are their names and what are their badge numbers? And let's start with that. And then let's have a little get together, an inquiry. Let's interview some of them. What were you doing? What were you thinking? Because we know there were a lot of officers there who were very uncomfortable, who were kind of standing off to the side, wanting nothing to do with this. And then there were a few thugs, like there always are a few thugs, who thought this is my time in the sunshine. So I think we need to do a little bit more investigating there. And guess what? If we get well funded, that's what we're going to do.
Speaking of inquiry, there is, of course, this ongoing inquiry into the rationale into why the Emergencies Act was declared, imposed on the people of Canada, still to the bewilderment of millions, not just in Canada, but outside of Canada, that this would happen for the first time ever. Are you having any hope at all? Do you have any hope at all that this will actually end up blowing up in Justin Trudeau's face, despite the political hack who was appointed to oversee this thing? Are you placing any credence or confidence on this inquiry to expose this for what it was, which is basically an act of fear and panic on the part of the government, and a desire to go after a retribution, really, against people like yourself for doing what you did, staging a peaceful protest that gained enormous amounts of support and money?
I have and always have had a lot of faith in the opportunism and the opportunistic nature of politicians. So they may want to try to sweep it under the rug, but there's always an opposition of some sort that wants to be elected. And my message to the other side, whether it's Pierre or anybody else, here's your opportunity, man, because there's a lot of people, the vast majority of people, who are on our side, despite what the fake news media wants to say. Yeah, there's a couple of areas in downtown Toronto, downtown Ottawa, who are not in support of the Freedom Convoy. But you know what's amazing? The number of people I've spoken to in Twitter Spaces, in email chats, who've reached out to us, whatever, who keep telling me, man, I'm from Ottawa. I was in Ottawa the entire time, and God bless you guys. It was so amazing to watch it. And one of the guys, I said, well, why did you find it so entertaining? He said, because all of my neighbors are obnoxious staffers for the Liberal Party. That's who's upset, because they work for Trudeau. Those aren't Ottawa citizens. Those are people who work in government. He said, but everybody else who's not politicized, who doesn't work for the Liberal Party specifically, we all loved it, man. Like this one guy told me, I was there every day. I did some filming, brought my kids down. We went to, the Sikh guys were having these barbecues. I saw the guys in the bathtub. It was hysterical in the, the hot tub and stuff. So everybody who was there, who isn't a psychopath or a staffer of the Liberal Party, had a great time. And you know what? That's the reality. That's the truth. And it's going to come out because I and thousands of other people are going to make sure the truth comes out. And it's not going to stop. So they can keep trying to redo the narrative and whatever. But okay, go ahead. Because there's a bunch of us who actually understand media messaging on this side. And I look forward to challenging them. It's great.
Let's wrap things up with this guy who does an incredible imitation of Justin Trudeau. Voice-wise, mannerism-wise, it's getting a lot of attention. Let's listen to this guy.
This morning, it came to my attention that my neighbor neglected to return my dryer laundry ball. This is unacceptable, and I will be invoking a and brutal sanction against the people of 908. 30 days, they will not be able to borrow any cream or sugar or butter. As Canadians, it's time for them to step up and to do the right thing and to realize the infinite dignity of each individual's laundry needs and supplies. Am I perfect? I've only made one mistake ever. Last week, I left the setting on whites instead of the
Cute.
diverse and inclusive colors. This resulted in a larger carbon footprint and an unsustainable use of energy. And even more tragic was the loss of one sock. And black socks matter.
Very cute. If I had one
Wow, he's
criticism,
good. He's
if I had
good.
one criticism, I'd say not nearly enough arms.
Yeah, he could use a few of those, but his voice is dead perfect, and the mannerisms, man, he nailed Junior.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyway, my friend, thanks for coming on the show. Great talking to you again. How do people support your organization, Honking for Freedom?
Just go to honkingforfreedom.com. They've set up some sort of donation, similar to GoFundMe or a GiveSendGo or something like that, but it's in Bitcoin. And 908 has unacceptable views. Kier Jammer, 100%, brother. They can go to honkingforfreedom.com. And we'll see if it gets enough attention and momentum and support behind it. And I think that's the way forward. I really caution anyone at this point who is putting any sort of narrative to say, oh, we need another convoy, we need to break down, we need to go whatever. The people saying a lot of people say stupid stuff on the internet all the time for entertainment value. But that's not the direction. The direction is to go forth and use, as Christopher Freeland likes to call them, the tools in our system to expose them all, put them all on the record. I think discovery in these sorts of court cases would be fascinating, and they would be running from it as quickly as possible.
Benjamin Dichter coming to us from Colombia. And we're going to take a brief commercial break. Back with more on Newstalk Saga 960 and the Mark Petronis Show after this.